Here we go. Atomic habits, small changes with big results, right? And this is really about how to intentionally create systems of productive habits to reach your goals, okay? The atomic, it fits in a couple of different ways. We'll talk about that more at the end, what that really means. But like I said, this information is really close to our heart. Before we get started, we encourage participation. Speak up or use the chat box. I always like to say, especially if you hear my voice at any given point, stop me because I want to talk with you and not at you, okay? If I say anything that's weird, you don't understand, or you just outright disagree, just be like, Joe, that's crap. What do you mean? And, I'll back up. We work for you, okay? If you're not talking, please mute your microphone. I think you guys have all experienced that now throughout the year. So this workshop has a couple of objectives. One, to understand what in the world a habit is and how they are formed, which I think that in and of itself was just, I don't know, it seemed like you think you know what a habit is until you really start asking yourself these questions. We want you to be able to learn how to identify and create effective habits, which in my mind that's the biggest thing, more so than breaking the bad ones. It's learning how to make new ones. And find out how making 1% changes can have dramatic results, which is really what the atomic is all about. It's not just that they're full of energy and all this other stuff. It's that they're teeny tiny. So let's start with what exactly is a habit, okay? Mr. Clear, who is the author of our book, our hero, Mr. Clear, says that a behavior that is repeated so often it becomes automated, okay? Meaning that you don't have to think about it. The reason that our brain creates habits is to save energy, okay? My favorite analogy for this is like if you imagine you're picking berries or somewhere in a field and it's hours and hours of berry picking. Well, you don't want to have to sit there and think about every single berry, right? So gradually, when the berry is the right color or it's the right firmness, your mind creates a habit to pick it. And the reason it does that is so that you can commit conscious thought to other things, like keeping yourself safe instead of like every single berry with your head down, okay? But you find over time, like if you're doing algebra, that isn't necessarily to our benefit, okay? And that's what we talk about next, right here, human nature. Why in the world do I keep gravitating to these unproductive activities when I have so much to do? All right, look, when we were all sent home, when I first encountered this book, full disclosure, I had to ask my therapist. The first Monday of every month, I was seeing my therapist, and I was just like, yo, what is it about us that just we do not do what we're supposed to do, right? I had been sent home for like a month, okay, and I had lined up all of these things, had this long to-do list, and things were still not getting done. And at that point, I was like, I have nothing else to do. Like, why am I not doing these things? And then it turns out it's actually Mr. Clear refers to a term called akrasia, which is the tendency to not do what we're supposed to. But the reason why we do that is really because we're not wired for these long-term activities. We're wired for instant gratification. Not much unlike picking the berries, it was the kind of thing that kept us alive, okay? I like to use hamburgers, all right? Once upon a time, it took great effort to make a hamburger. And if you were gonna get a bite of that hamburger, the person that had the quickest reaction was most likely to get a bite of the hamburger, right? Whether you were hungry or not. Now we live in a world where we're surrounded with hamburgers and all of that work has not vanished. All the work that it took to create the hamburger has not vanished. It has now gone into making sure that we don't eat more hamburgers than is healthy, okay? Really quickly, if you can speak up or answer in the chat, but what are some of your favorite unproductive habits? I know PlayStation is one of my favorites. I had to unplug it. I didn't even plug it in for spring break because I didn't want to bleed back over to this.
I'd say YouTube.
Like, YouTube?
Yeah.
YouTube.
It just goes off.
Yeah, I feel for y'all. Her too, YouTube. Yeah, I feel for y'all. I didn't really realize, like I had a mentee, I've had him since he was like 16, that grown man, now he's almost 30. But watching him, and I've realized YouTube is his thing. And I get it, I see it, man. And it's only a click away. I have a tendency to watch one thing on YouTube, really. I never really did watch YouTube very often. YouTube is kind of difficult to break away from because it really is a click away. I will say, yeah, there is one, because that's what we're talking about, discipline and things like that. But the easiest way, which is Kelly's going to tell you about later, is to just make the habit invisible, which is hard to do with YouTube. But fortunately, I did find an app that will block sites for you. So you can say from 6 to 8, I can only go to this site, or I cannot do this, and you will not be able to access YouTube at all, which is actually what discipline looks like. Discipline does not look like the person that never clicks YouTube. Discipline looks like the person that goes through the effort to get the app, right, to block it off, because that's the point. That's the way we're wired. You're wired to watch YouTube. You're not wired to study. But society has grown to where very clearly watching YouTube is not going to take us anywhere. Oh, there it is. Yeah, humans hardwired for instant gratification. And there it is. Like once upon a time, it kept us alive, but now it's just generally inconvenient and or inappropriate. But I think the big thing here to understand, it doesn't mean that you're weak or soft or something like that. And there is no person out there that can sit there with the phone in their face, and when that green block pops up, not react to that thing. Like, it's impossible. It's like Pavlov, which we're going to talk about later. You have an ingrained physical reaction to your phone, and the same thing goes with like the PlayStation or anything else laying around, even the YouTube. Once you see that little red thing up there, you're going to want to click it. You know, as soon as you get bored or distracted, you're going to want to click that little red thing because it was fun once. So now, what do you guys think? I mean, can we choose habits directly? Is it a thing that we can pick and choose, or are we just forever subject to our whims? Anybody?
I'll take a shot at it. I think what I've kind of learned was habits are, yes, they can be changed. I think the biggest thing is just going through the phase of trying to get rid of it. Like old habits die hard. One instance I remember was when I was going to boot camp, and like when I first started out, like they had us wake up at like 5 a.m. in the morning, had us throw on clothes like the span of 5 minutes, but not even 5, like 2 or 3 minutes. And I'm like just wondering, like, how the heck am I supposed to do this for the next 3 months? But you know, over time, as you got past that hard phase, it became normal, and then you just kind of do it automatically. So it's just trying to give up that comfort. That, I think that's the biggest thing that happens.
Yeah, that's the word right there, comfort. Good job, dude. Yep. And then that 4th month, you're waking up at 5 a.m. for no reason, and that's really what this is all about. Okay. Particularly you guys, if any of you guys in here that we have worked together or have worked with any coaches, the time management stuff, that is exactly what he's describing, and that's the way that stuff is built. So now we're going to get into habit forming, and Kelly is going to break down like how this actually happens.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, so let's talk about habit formation, and really, James Clear is really clear about how he defines habit, which Joe gave you the definition as how it's repeated often becomes automated. And so let's talk about good and bad habits, right? James Clear actually says that they're not really good or bad. They're effective or ineffective. So if you think about it, sometimes those bad habits were effective at helping us avoid a situation, or they were ineffective at helping us do something that we needed to do. And so he really does talk about how habits can be formed and kind of how to look at them as effective and ineffective. And then, as Joe said, productive or unproductive.
Right.
So really kind of reframing that in your head, I think, is important to kind of think about, thinking about these habits as not good or bad, but more effective or ineffective or productive or unproductive.
Correct.
And so then he really goes on to talk about why habits are kind of reinforced. And so we talk about the ultimate or the immediate or the ultimate response reward. And so basically what that boils down to is if you think about a bad habit or an ineffective habit, odds on are that reward is immediate. I know the example he gives in a book is you see a donut, you eat the donut, and you feel happy. So that's the immediate reward. Now, if you continue to do that bad habit continuously for the rest of the year, odds on you're going to put on about 30 pounds. And so the ultimate reward is negative, right? You have gained weight. And so that bad habit has now caused a bad effect. And then the problem with the good habits is it's very hard to see that immediate effect, right? So if you pass up the donut, it's hard to see 365 days later that you haven't gained weight. So it is really hard to see that ultimate reward. So a lot of times these habit formation do tend to arise in a sense that we see an immediate outcome, or we have to think about that ultimate outcome.
Right. It's like the whole thing started. The reason you have that habit is because it served you at one point.
Yeah.
Like you were really bored and then you clicked on YouTube. And then it was just like, hell yeah, not bored anymore. And gradually that little red dot at the top of the thing began to represent non-boredom. Okay. And every time you see that you're now drawn to that because it was, it did the job once, but it only becomes like bad or ineffective when you're trying to do something else and you keep on, doing that instead, so to speak.
So let's kind of talk about the science behind habit formation. So as Joe mentioned, Pavlov, most students have heard of Pavlov's dogs. And so this is one of the probably most famous experiments in relation to behavioral theory. And so basically just a rundown of the experiment was, so Pavlov basically noticed that dogs salivated every time they saw their food, right? It's an innate response to seeing food. So Pavlov decided that he was going to see if he could make dogs salivate without food. And so what he would do is every time the dog saw food, that was the cue, he would ring a bell. And so they would start to associate that ringing bell with the salivation, and then the reward was they got to eat their food. And so basically what happened was Pavlov could ring the bell and the dog would not see the food, but would have that response of salivating. So that was kind of the start of this behavioral theory and kind of this reinforcement of behavior. And then it progressed, as science usually does, into cognitive behavioral theory. And so this is where James Clear kind of stakes his claim, and he added in the term craving. So he added in that cognitive component to really kind of let people associate that thinking process with that actual response. So you see the cue, and then your brain, it triggers a cue in your brain, and you have a craving for that. And so then, as Joe said, like YouTube, I'm sorry, let me let in another student real quick. So you have that YouTube, you see that red thing, and that has alleviated boredom. So now you have that craving for it. It is a great way to alleviate boredom. So you constantly are seeing that cue, and then that's causing that craving. And so that leads to that habit formation. Correct.
Yeah, I think thinking about it now, like I feel like these habits are kind of on a spectrum, right? I mean, I definitely think he's onto something with craving, particularly something like eating a donut or something like that, because there's definitely that, ooh, I want a donut. And then we're really cognizant of that moment where you just want a donut. But I think the Pavlov thing, like this one, what's really interesting about this one is that the dog is in no way control of salivating, right? You can't like make yourself drool, okay? And I think this is really relevant in terms of like, especially like our phones. Like this is the kind of reaction that we have to our phones. Like that moment is so slim that once a green block pops up on my phone, like I have a completely different reaction, and my boss will tell you than if it's an email. Okay, if an email pops up, if it's a Gmail, I know I can check it later. If it's a green block, I'm gonna snap to, and I'm gonna grab my phone, and I'm gonna find out what in the world is going on. Okay, and it's really hard to combat that. All right, if you think about all the different things that have happened as a result of responding to that little green block, right? Over the years, it's been emergencies, It's been the phone call you were waiting for forever. It's been umpteen million things. And especially nowadays, sitting around the crib by myself, I'm dying for that thing to turn green and come on, right? But once again, it's like discipline ultimately is not the person that cannot respond to that thing. When you ring the bell, the dog starts drooling. That's the way it goes. That little moment of craving, I'm not sure, like, I believe it exists all the time, but in thinking about it today, I think that in certain things like that bell or the phone, that moment of craving is so slim that there's really not much time for reaction at all. You know what I'm saying? I think because once, especially if you're studying, right, you're off task instantly, you know, whether you grab the phone or not. So once again, like, discipline really looks like the person that puts the phone away or just blocks YouTube altogether. So
let's talk about breaking bad habits, right? We all have bad habits. We all want to know how to break them. Does anybody have any ideas or thoughts on how they try to break their own bad habits before we get into some of James Clear's strategies?
That's a good question. What have you guys figured out over the years?
What has worked for you?
Stop biting your nails or something. You can put that in the chat or you can speak up.
I think something weird for me, even though it's weird. So I remember I used to game a lot, especially on PlayStation and Switch. And then when I went overseas, I was fortunate enough to go overseas. I didn't bring my console with me for some ungodly reason. So I remember I suffered for like the next 3 or 5 months. Like, I can't game. Like, what is this mess? And then, like, over time, like, it cutting cold turkey in the situation like that. Now I just don't really game anymore. Like, I switched to something else. So I think
you switched.
Yeah, like, you switch from one thing to another, and I guess it just helped me out. And you know, it's not in front of my face. It's a lot easier to like forget about.
Yeah, I like the fact that you threw the switch in there because there you go. I try to do something different than what I usually do. Fam, that's what I think, right? Because it's like if you eat a bowl of ice cream at 8 o'clock every night, when it turns 8 o'clock, you're gonna need to do something, right? I mean, it's still 8 o'clock. Like, it's not like 8 o'clock went away. Like, 8 o'clock comes, like, you need to fill that gap with something. So I feel like, after, these things or whatever, there's, kind of like Coach said, you switch, you need to fill it in with something else.
Yeah.
What else did we see in the chat? I saw a few more responses in the chat. Litzy said she turns off the notifications, which my phone stays off. In all honesty, like I don't, it never rings. I don't get any notifications.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody for sharing. And we can definitely address more after we kind of talk about some of these strategies that James Clear offers. So he is really good about giving you breaking bad habits, and then we also can address creating new habits, which was addressed. So let's talk about breaking bad habits first. So first thing is make it invisible, right? So we talked about those cues. Definitely want to reduce exposure. The less things you see, so if you don't see it, out of sight, out of mind, try to avoid being in that situation where like it's right in front of you. So turning notifications off on your phone, that's making it invisible, right? You're not getting that cue. So that's a really good one. All right, so make it unattractive. Guys, this is really a good one about your mindset. So making sure that you recognize the benefits of avoiding that bad habit, right? So if you are struggling with staying focused with studying or anything like that, what are the benefits of avoiding that phone notification? I can get 10 more minutes of studying in, or I can focus for 15 more minutes and get 2 more math problems done. And so that's 15 minutes less that I have to stay up, right? So really kind of affecting your mindset. Sorry.
Yeah. That was nice. That was a good one.
Yeah. All right. Making it difficult. Guys, this kind of goes in with those cues, right? He has 2 different kind of ways to address this. Increasing friction, right? So if it takes only 1 step to hit your TV remote and turn all of your systems on, that's not difficult, right? That's a really easy thing. But if you make it where I have to go get my switch from another room, I have to plug in the docking station, I have to get the controller, I have to do all these things, odds on are you're going to go, oh, it's just not worth it. I know sometimes you will, right? But the more steps you can put between you and that bad habit, the better. And then really making it unsatisfying, guys. So they talk about a few things here, trying to get an accountability partner. So somebody that is kind of aware of, hey, you're trying to break this bad habit. They can kind of at least be that go-to person, kind of hold you accountable, see what's going on. And then he also said make a contract with yourself, right? So I'm going to avoid this bad habit for this many days, and I'm going to do X, Y, Z. So really kind of holding yourself accountable. If you do have that accountability partner, you have that extra layer, but if you need that contract with yourself, it's going to be really important. And so again, a lot of the stuff with James Clear is those habits are your habits, right? And so you have to figure out a way to break those bad habits. And so using some of these different strategies to fit your needs.
I think on this one in particular, I think it's like make it invisible and make it difficult. I think because for me, make it unattractive and make it unsatisfying. While they are definitely helpful, it's hard for me to keep it like that all the time. Because if I'm in the right mood, like that's the thing. To do, you know what I'm saying? So sometimes, but make it invisible and make it difficult. I think the best example really, and I think it's probably a good opportunity like to speak on like a chemical dependency and things like that, right? Because that adds a whole nother layer to this whole thing. And that's a completely different kind of craving as opposed to like, well, it's a deeper craving, I suppose. It's not that different, but it's a little deeper. But in the book, he speaks to when a lot of the vets were in Vietnam, okay, and everybody picked up that heroin habit. And when they came back, everybody thought that was it for them, okay? And like, I think it was 3 out of 4 completely dropped the habit. And up until that point, it was thought that, you know, once you're a heroin addict, that's it. But once they got home, the cues were removed. They weren't around their buddies all the time. It wasn't just around every corner. And they weren't in the middle of a war. A lot of them just dropped it. The cues were gone, and they just dropped it. So, I mean, it's a very, very powerful, those cues.
Yeah. So, and I think he made a really good point is habits are a part of your life that you can control and change. So, you know, taking advantage of using, oh, I'm sorry, let me let the student in. So taking advantage of these different strategies to really kind of help you develop what works for you. And I think people really focus on changing the outcome, but really you want to change the habit that leads to that outcome. So we talked about breaking bad habits. So now we're going to conversely go into creating good habits. And so same question, guys. Is there some strategy that you guys use to kind of solidify those good habits that you have every day?
I think what makes it easier for me, I think one of them was trying to get up early. So what I found interesting was when you just go and do it, like I put my phone like across my room and just wake up and say, you know what, I'll just go to the bathroom and wash my hair just to start. It's a lot easier. Like when you just go out there and make the action to do it, you break past that mental barrier, and that's something that helped me with just waking up early. So it's just doing the action. Just say, you know what, screw it, do it. It works. And
you know what? That's a really good time to mention something that we do not have a slide on. But he's saying that most of the time, it's not doing the activity; it's getting started. You know what I'm saying? It's like thinking about mopping the floor. If you just keep thinking about mopping the floor, you're going to imagine that it's so much worse than it actually is. So, I mean, to your point, Kobe, yeah, I mean, I definitely believe in that. It's not always as easy to do as we like it to be. But yeah, I definitely think that there's a point there where it's like, stop thinking about it. You know, stop making any decisions on it and just do it if you already decided you're going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. So let's kind of talk about.
On my phone that reminds me of habits. Me too. Yeah. That's an implementation device. We'll talk
Yep.
about that again in a minute.
There we go. So yeah, so y'all already have some good ideas on how to kind of solidify these good habits. So let's talk about, so if you notice, these are the inverse or converse, I guess would be the correct term, to the breaking bad habits. So first, we want to make it obvious. So exposing yourself to that cue, the more the better, right? So first thing that James Clear kind of recommended that students use, or everybody uses, is a habit scorecard. So make a list of all the habits you have and rate them if they're good or bad. Just be aware of what you're doing. And so the more you're aware, the easier it is to kind of address, like, hey, is this effective or ineffective? Next thing that you can do is implementation intention, right? So, and this is something that we actually use in coaching when we work with our students on time management. But James Clear says, I'm going to do this behavior at this time in this location, right? So you have given yourself an exact time, place, and behavior for that specific action. So when we talk about creating our time management schedule, we really work with you guys on creating a study plan. So you know, at this time on this day, I'm going to be sitting down at my desk and I'm going to be studying English. So you really be direct and intentional with it. It does help it make it more obvious. And then, cues. I know one of the big things that he talked about, like a student wanted to learn how to play guitar. And so he said, have that cue front and center, right? So I sit down on my couch every day after work, that guitar is right there. So really making sure that you are aware of that habit, you have a time and date of when you're going to do it, and that you see it every day. Make it attractive, right? So he has a couple strategies to making it attractive. You can pair it with something that you need to do and something that you want to do. So again, I need to study, but I want to do fill in the blank. So kind of pairing those two together. And then also using motivation for yourself. So starting with something that you enjoy and then following it up with something you need to do, or you can do it vice versa. So we always say, start with your hardest class first. And then I say, hey, what's your favorite class? Maybe give yourself a little reward after you completed that hard algebra class. So thinking about ways like that to really kind of encourage yourself is going to be really important. Make it easy. So guys, this is the big thing Joe said, starting that action. If there's a lot of friction, you're not going to do it. So if you can make it one step, I know every morning, like the Keurig, right? That's so easy now, right? You just put the little K-cup machine, you hit the button and go. So think of it like that. In the old days, coffee pot, you had to grind the beans and you had to put the filter in and do all that. So, life has moved to this more easy, automated kind of technology. So using anything like that that's going to help you make it easier. And then the big thing, and I really think this is great, is the 2-minute rule. Try to get your habit down to 2 minutes or less, right? So if you want to try and become a runner, step one, I got to put on my shoes every day. That's a habit. It takes less than a minute probably to put a shoe on and tie it. So building those habits and kind of getting yourself into that, I can do this in 2 minutes.
I was just going to say that, and that running, like, Coach, that's exactly what I was going to say too, is like, just is make it little, or make it, like you said, 2 minutes or less. Whereas like my goal was to run, it gradually became to just wake up and put my tights on.
Yeah.
Because once I put my tights and my shorts on, like, no matter how I feel at the time I put them on, 3 hours later, I will be sweaty in the shower. Like, I'm not going to take them off. I'm going to feel like a loser if I take them off. Once they're on, I'm supposed to go do something. So, and
hopefully you had them sitting out. So it was like in your line of sight, and it was like one step ready to go.
That's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
They're laying there right there on the thing. So it was like first thing.
Yeah. And so then finally make it satisfying. I really like this. This is really important, especially when talking about habits and creating those good habits. We talk about trying to take that outcome and bring it into the present. So making sure that you can see that reward. So could be as simple as doing a to-do list and checking things off. Like, that is a satisfying For most people, like, yes, I accomplished this, it's good. And so maybe, you know, by the end of the week, you have all these check marks and you can see that you have this progress. And then never miss twice, right? So if you have a couple days where you didn't have your check marks, you know, try not to have it the next day. Try to build that string and see that you can get that continuous. And so when you get that continuous like line of check marks, you don't want to make that
Right.
break, right?
And then that becomes the habit. Like making the check marks becomes the habit, and now
You're
you're not
doing it less. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're
Exactly.
gonna have that moment, like you said, right? When you think about it before you, and if you just go and do it, well, yes, you're a checklist person. I just have realized like the magic of checklists.
Yep.
Guys, like it's real, it's true. Those of you that are not doing it, give it a try.
That's why Google Calendar has the task list now for you. All right. So just kind of listening. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns before we move on to our next little bit? I'm pulling Joe's line.
No questions, comments, and concerns?
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to goals and systems. So this is another really important part of forming those habits, right? So the big thing with this is goals focus on outcomes and systems focus on the process. And when we see this, this is where we kind of have some issues because goals are what's visible, right? We can't see the process. We can't see the steps that go into it. You know, it's hard to visualize. It's hard to see that. But it's really easy to see the outcome. So this is why we have a hard time kind of forming those habits. And so really, I love this quote from James Clear, and it says, achieving a goal changes your life for a minute. Changing your identity changes your life. And so it's really important to think about that, is that when we see that goal, we want to kind of reassess. And so he really is really big on focusing on reframing that goal into changing your identity. And so really what we want to do is talk about how can we change that identity for ourselves. And so I'm going to go with an example for a student, right? So most students say, I want to make all A's this semester. And so that's a great goal. And so you can see that outcome at the end of the semester, right? You see those A's. But in reality, James Clear suggests that you want to change your identity and say, I want to become a better student. And then I would measure that, as Joe says, every day with those A's. And so that really is going to lead us into our next segment. And so I'm going to let Joe kind of move into that. Let's assess how to change that identity.
Yeah, this was really, guys, you know, we were talking earlier about removing cues, and it was really funny. We were saying, go back to this quote, because I really love this one too. And we were talking about this in the run through, and a really funny thing, it dawned on me, right? Like, so when I was like not drinking, right? Like what I actually did was like keep one beer in the fridge that I never drank. And then I was like forever not drinking. So when I went out or like in other situations, like I was always a non-drinker, like 24 hours a day, which is funny. I didn't really think about it, but yeah, I mean, it goes, this is really what it's about, right? It's like, you don't, like getting a six pack, the goal of getting a six pack is hard, right? But all the little tiny goals along the way is how you get there, right? Becoming somebody that works out, becoming somebody that eats right, that collects all of those habits and those systems. And honestly, that's how I made it through quarantine, these systems. And I did everything I could to like do what Coach said, stop thinking about it, and just follow the system. And
highlighting each one of those wins is going to be your key.
Each time, each incremental little thing or whatever, which really, before we look at this list, let's talk about the 1% really quickly, because that's really what the 1% is about. Okay. You see 1% everywhere, and you see 1% every day. All right. And that's really what this is all about, is these small incremental little changes. Right. So it's like my goal was to do all of this running, but just by reducing it down to putting my tights on at the right time or at the same time every day, I ended up really running way more miles than I thought I was going to. One day I came home, I told these guys I ran 7 miles out of nowhere. Never in my life I ran 7 miles. I don't even, but all I did was put my tights on and follow the system. And so it's like, while putting your tights on at the beginning may seem like you're not getting far, if you keep putting your tights on like that, you will eventually like run that 7 miles. And then I like this one, the 1% everywhere, which gets a little buried. And that's about setting up like multiple systems, right? The example he uses at the very beginning is of, I think, the British cycling team that had never won anything ever in life. So they get this new coach and he just goes around messing with everything. Okay? Like their tights, their tires, what kind of milk do they drink? Like everywhere, like cut their hair, different gloves, different everywhere, 1% all over the place. And they went on to dominate in the next decade. So I think those are the two things about the 1%. It's 1% everywhere. Look for places. There's always somewhere to find 1%. There's always somewhere to find another 1%. Always. We're never doing everything to the best of our ability, like 100%. There's always a way to improve. And then every day, like stick with that 1% and watch what happens at the end.
Yeah.
Here's
if you do 1% every day for the whole year, you'd be amazed at what that changes.
Yes, 365%. So here we have a list of sticking with habits and getting started. Let you guys take a look at this. There's some cool stuff on here. If you read any of these and you're like, wait, what does that mean? Ask, because some of them are abbreviated for us. One of them on there, like win the boredom that we didn't talk about. Dude, it's not the guy that wants to go shoot all the baskets at the gym. It's the guy that goes to shoot them even when they're hella boring and it's freezing cold. Okay? So when you get sick of doing something, that's a really good way to bring it into the present, right? Because when you're sick of doing something, you're making it. Like you know, like at that point where you're just like, oh my God, I'm so tired of doing this. But if you're still doing it, like pat yourself on the back because you're making it. You're winning the boredom. We have, the process, not the goal.
What about don't dwell on the future? I'm very curious about that one.
Oh, dwell on failure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Don't dwell on failure. I'll be honest with you. It's funny you said dwelling on the future because even that, it's like be present. Be present for what you're doing. That's part of the point of like focusing on the system and not the goal. The goal is always forever away. That 6-pack is always forever away until you get it. You never know. It's like you're gonna wake up in the morning and get 6-pack. It doesn't even work that way. You never know when you're actually gonna get that 6-pack. The goal is forever away. So it's like you really want to stay present in what you're doing today and make that as meaningful or more meaningful than the 6-pack. If you can make what you're doing, you can make that crunch more meaningful than the 6-pack, then you're much more likely to get the 6-pack and keep it. If that makes sense. So there's be present right there. You know what I'm saying? And certainly don't think about what happened last time.
Yep, out of sight, out of mind, right?
Yeah, if it worked, I guess, there's always that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
but,
again, with your dwelling on the failure, right? Chalk it up. I had a bad day. Everybody has bad days when you're trying to form a new habit or trying to break a bad habit, right? Just look at it as, hey, what went wrong? Did I, see a cue? Did I do that? And just, give yourself permission to have a bad day, move forward, and then figure out how you're going to keep moving forward.
Yeah. And be patient. Be patient with yourself when you're watching over those cues too. Because it's like, we were talking the other day and it's lucky. You're lucky if it's like seeing that little red tab up there. You know what I'm saying? Because some of these habits are just, you get a depressed thought. You know what I mean? And the next thing you know, you're over here in the liquor cabinet or something. You know what I mean? So like, you really want to be patient with yourself and take time. First, stop beating yourself up for your terrible habit or whatever. And then, you know what I'm saying? Like ever so patiently, take time, because that 1% goes the other way too. Like when you're trying to break things down, you know what I'm saying? Like we don't get to quit everything cold turkey, but sometimes it's like if we smoked one less cigarette than we did last week, that's 1%. And eventually we'll get to the end of the path. Self-sabotage. What about self-sabotage? That's hella deep. Like, what do we think self-sabotage really is? That's deep. Oh, you know what? I do got something for self-sabotage. Okay, so check this out. first of all, it's probably fear. Yeah. Okay. Check this out. So my favorite thing on here, like the commitment device is dope, but the implementation device is one thing, but the commitment device is something else. All right. So the story he uses the commitment device is a gentleman named Victor Hugo. All right. So this man signs a contract and the editor says, all right, you got 2 years to write this book. And he's like, all right, cool. He's like, here's your advance. Takes the bread or whatever. A year later, sits down in front of the editor and he's like, yo, you haven't written nothing. You know, and he's like, I still got a year. He's like, a year? Nah, man, you got 6 months. And we're coming for all that money, every penny. And he's like, yo, 6 months. So he goes home, right? Tells his quote unquote servant to take all of his clothes, put them in a trunk, okay, leave him his robe so he doesn't freeze his bobo in the house. Take the trunk away to where he cannot find it. This is all of his clothes. So he cannot leave the house, right? Which sounds crazy. But in 6 months, he writes The Hunchback of Notre Dame, okay? He doesn't just write a book, he writes a literary classic, okay? A lot of this, like, it's funny, like, dude, okay, a lot of this, man, that's a lot of the time the difference between a successful person and an unsuccessful person. It's the person that was willing to go that length, right? And all these years later, we've all heard of the Hunchback of Notre Dame, but none of y'all have heard that story because that's not what history remembers. History remembers the great things you do, not the crazy things that you did to get them done. That's reality, yo, okay? It's like those little voices that we have. I feel like it's funny because like since I've read this book and I know this at students or whatever, like I don't think one of y'all has been like, I don't know what you're talking about. But those little voices that we have that say, oh, no, that's too much. Or, oh, no, that's crazy. I'm not doing all that, right? I don't know what that voice is. I don't know where it came from, but guess what? It's wrong. Whatever you thought of was probably the thing to do. If you said, man, I'm going to take all these things, I'm going to burn them. Man, I bet you that was the thing to do. And you don't have to tell nobody but your journal. But if your life goes on, yeah, you know what I'm saying? If your life goes on without, whatever it was that was bothering you, that's all history is going to remember. No one will know that crazy that you did. Code.
So would you say like kind of similar how Hugo did it was kind of put yourself in like a situation like where you're hungry or you have a sense of urgency.
Well, he couldn't do nothing else. He made it to where he couldn't do nothing else. He couldn't leave the house. He was going to have to go outside butt naked. Like he take all that stuff. All he had was a robe. That was it. He could not go outside. That's
an extreme commitment device, but yeah.
Yeah, I have one of you guys when we were talking, and she did it too, and I was really surprised. Like, came back one day. I didn't think she was gonna come back either, and she popped back up, and she had a sheet around her, right? And I was like, yo. So she had put that sheet up to remove all of the rest of the cues in her room. Since she couldn't leave the room, she still uses the sheet. But that's a big thing, man. Like, I don't know, those little voices that say, I'm telling you, for me, that's too much. And I don't know where the hell I got that from. But as soon as I get, that's just too much. That's crazy. Nah, man, just do it. Just do it. History does not remember the crazy thing you did to get it done. It only remembers this accomplishment that you made. Like, I don't know. I mean, we don't know. Like, we don't know how many stories there are like that because people don't tell them. You know what I'm saying? Like, people don't tell you they slept in their shoes and socks so that when they woke up, they just hit the ground and ran to the gym. They don't tell you that stuff.
No.
You don't hear all of that stuff, And very seldom does anybody tell you how miserable it was, quote unquote. I hate to do that, but like win the boredom. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, yeah. It's not easy. It's not easy. It's not entertaining all the time. But it's like Kelly said, if you can just bring it into the present, man, you got to make that process that much more attractive than that goal. Because look here, man, I'll tell you what, if you the 6-pack is my favorite one, dog, because like you get that 6-pack, that's only gonna last like 2 weeks. If you try to get that 6-pack and then go to vacation, it's gonna last a week. Because you're gonna go on vacation, you're not gonna lift, you're gonna eat bad salty food, you're not gonna drink water, you're gonna drink. And when you get back, your 6-pack will be gone. That's why it's so important to really marry the process.
Right.
Also, a lot of times, if we're focused on the goal, the closer we get, we start losing steam.
Yep.
We're like, oh, got 4, and then you just start, oh, that's almost 6.
Or like the people who run marathons one time and then they never run again.
Oh man, I think I'm cut from that cloth. I can see myself one time,
Yeah.
and that being about it. But I mean, yeah, this was fun, dude. I really enjoyed. This was a good group too.
Yeah. So I think that's all we have, right? I mean, we're open floor. Anybody have any questions?
Let's do the last slide. I think we skipped one. Growth mindset, and no, I talked about that one.
I mean,
yeah, the growth mindset, we skipped that one, but I mean, I think that's almost self-explanatory at this point, right? I mean, we're not going to get the results tomorrow being the same person that we are today. Like we got to be somebody new. I mean, who wants to be the same person forever? It's whack. I don't want to be this guy next year. Oh, can you explain the boredom more, Alita? Man, Alita, you know what I mean? I mean, like, I think there's a myth that someone loves every moment of all of this stuff. You know what I mean? That there's like, how do I get motivated? Okay, which my answer up until this was Cove's answer. Just pull the trigger and go. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then I got this, and I was like, oh, okay, this makes so much sense as to why it's so difficult. Simultaneously realizing I was having such a hard time pulling the trigger, even with everything set up. I had my whiteboard, I had everything written down on there, and I still wasn't getting it done. But winning the boredom, it's keeping the process going. It's keeping the process going in the middle, right? In the beginning, you just started. Yeah, I shoot baskets every day now. And then a year later, you're still on JV. You're just like, oh my God, and your goal, right, is to eventually be on varsity. But here you are still on JV, and varsity is still like another year away. But you need to keep shooting, because if you stop shooting, you're not going to enjoy it. Or, vice versa, you're going to lose that 6-pack because it's not entertaining anymore. Those crunches aren't entertaining. You're there. Like, why should I keep doing these crunches? And then very quickly. So really winning the boredom is about maintaining the systems that you put in place. Like,
ways to kind of cheat that is, motivation, right? Humans, we like extrinsic motivation. So finding little things that motivate you. If you are kind of like, oh, this is boring, this is tedious, okay, what can I reward myself with? And so eventually that extrinsic motivation does become internal. And so then you do get that internal like drive to keep going. So, sometimes you have to kind of trick your brain into it. And then it becomes that like intrinsic good habit that you continue that process.
Yeah, I know I have more of an issue of getting started than I do winning the boredom per se. Except, well, I mean, I guess there's like those moments where it's hard to start because it's going to be boring. But still, like, once it's rolling, like I usually don't have.
We'll get it down to 2 minutes, right?
Right. Get it
down into 2-minute like I can do this for 2 minutes and then this for 2 minutes. And so then you're telling your brain like, hey, it's only 2 minutes. And so then you're changing it to something new. And so hopefully that can kind of help that process as well.
Yeah. And then like Kobe was saying too about your comfort zone, dude. That's the other thing. I think winning the boredom, like for me, that's your chance to be great when it gets really hard, which I'm glad we came to that point, because I needed to hear that. Like when it gets hard, that's like your chance to be great. So when it's boring, you can rest assured that's when the other person quit. And if you are still pressing through the boredom, then, I feel like that's a reward in and of itself for me at this point. But I guess I'm an old guy now. But as long as you keep pushing through things, like you're gonna get results. It's just you just set the system up, or have somebody help you set your system up, and then preferably scientifically data-driven system of some sort, and then stick to it, and you're gonna get your result at the end.
So would you like compare it to like a video game, like say a fighting game where you just fight? This came up to my mind, but like in the beginning, you don't know anything about fighting games. They throw you
mash your buttons.
Yeah, and then you figure out the bare bones of it, You go and fight opponents, and then you hit some cheap guy named Mr. Bison that just knocks you in your butt multiple times. It's like, who is this dude? And for some reason, you just can't beat him. That's like your barrier in life. And it's like you have to go back. You have to learn all the combos. You have to watch people do crazy combos. You're thinking like, how am I supposed to pull off a 6-string combo in like 3 seconds?
Right.
And you just keep doing it over and over and over again until now you're
Until
like,
one day it just bam, right? Yeah, that's achievement. That's achievement. Without struggle, you can't achieve. Like there is no achievement. There is no achievement. You know what? That's another thing. I'm glad, Alita, you brought that up because now I start to think about it too. It's like productive struggle, guys. You don't learn. If you do not struggle with the material at any given point, you do not learn. So it's like if you catch yourself fussing, fighting, struggling, or just, like you said, bored, trying to stick to the system, that's probably the moment. You're probably there. You're probably just about to become great. Becoming great is not. It's not. We don't get to do it all with smiles all the time. That's just how it is. Bench pressing 500 pounds is hard to do with a smile on your face. And then you get up and you're like, yeah, I do the too. You know what I mean? But all the work you did to do it, it was work. It was grueling. And, it wasn't fun. But when things get difficult, that's your chance to be great. And that's how I bring my goal into the present, because it's like I'm great right now. Whether or not I get that 6-pack, like I'm kicking ass right now. I'm still on the track. And so I just try to focus on that. If that makes sense to everybody. Anybody got anything else? Are we wrapping up? What was the app? I got to find it. Cheryl, let me.
There's one I think called Cold Turkey, I think is one. If you have Chrome, there's a extension, a Chrome extension that will do it for you. If you want to do it on your iPhone, I know there's the Do Not Disturb on your iPhone. You can set that to where it will not let you change, click in to the different notifications.
Yeah, I can't. It's in the Google Drive. It's on that dude that we made. Yeah, Code. Thank you, dude. Oh, we've got our last slide. If you guys can, you need to read. We all need to read that book. Can you guys reframe any of the goals to focus on the systems? You guys, you can answer, or you can just think to yourself. But can you rethink anything that you're trying to do in terms of systems as opposed to that goal? And the website where you can find the book and our next workshop.
James Clear has a website that you guys, I'll send you the link. You can subscribe to his newsletter. He sends a lot of really great information out weekly. And then just any other, a lot of the habit trackers and things like that are available on his website as well. So if you want an actual hard copy, that will be on his website.
Oh yeah, and dude, YouTube the guy. You could go in there, YouTube any of this information and hear it from the horse's mouth. The guy does an excellent job. He's mastered the philosophy of conveying big ideas with small words. That's the only reason it's so easy for us to be like do because the dude has it. I mean, all for lack of a better term, down to a science, man.
Yeah.
Oh look. Whitney reading the book. So you guys are in here reading the book. Dope.
Yeah.
That's what's up.
It's a good, fast, easy read. I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, and it's a dope ebook too. I'm not usually into ebooks, but wow, that was a sweet ebook.
Yeah. I actually found it on YouTube. They have an audio version on YouTube. So if you just Google it, yeah.
Yeah, there you go, guys.
So if you want to listen to it. And if you also, I listen to the book, and then he gives you links to all of the resources that he talks about in the book as well. So you have access to all of that if you choose to listen to it.
Yeah, stuff everywhere. James Clear is the man's name. Definitely a hero of mine. Yeah, this was cool.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for coming.
Welcome. Yeah, thank you for all your participation.